I'm going to be talking about a pinwheel experiment that occurred on December the 1st, 2022. Now, we didn't meet on Thanksgiving, so our last meeting was on November the 17th, and during that session we had 0 activations. Then, during the following week, during the time period we're talking about, between 7 and 10 o'clock, there's only 1 activation of lefty, so the average activation is 0.14. Then on Thanksgiving Day, I removed that covering. That covering prevented virtually all the activity. Alice never, it stopped all turning of Alice. There was never a turn of Alice once the covering was on there. So we removed the covering on noon on November the 27th, and we started having a lot of activations. During that time period, the 7 to 10 time period, we had 39.6 activations on average. Then during our meeting, we had 85 activations. So we had a very strong performance during the meeting, a lot of activations, but very unusual activations. There wasn't very much turning. Now here's the setup video. We set up right before 7 o'clock, and of course we have this typical phenomena. Here you hear me closing the door, I'm leaving the room, then the pinwheel starts jiggling around and it becomes still, and I did a zoom video and the pinwheels were absolutely still. The indoor temperature is 72, outdoor temperature is 38. So we start the meeting, and here's what's going on. I'm remarking about what does this mean, the fact that
so it's signifying that to us that it has that awareness. I guess that would be the interpretation.
I mean, but on some level, on some level, it's just really, you really want to know, what is the deal, right?
Yeah. What are we dealing with?
But I was going back.
What are we dealing with? This Alice pinwheel is turning, but it's only turning about a quarter turn, and so it's activating the Alice camera, which is set at a very low level, but the turning is just strong enough to activate the Alice camera, but it's not activating the other camera. It's at a different setting. So it's as if the phenomena is aware of the different settings, and it's acting in a manner which is only causing one camera to turn on. So we had a very productive meeting. We had a lot of exciting conversation, and now we're discussing Melanie. She has some kind of a water poltergeist in her apartment, and so we're talking about that.
They're pretty feisty, water poltergeists. I know. No, my good friend, my childhood friend, had a water poltergeist in her apartment.
And what did it do?
It chased her out.
Like in particular, like patterns, or?
Yeah, Melanie has all kinds of patterns. She's got a foster child. A lot of the conversation was centered around that, but the foster child, the toys that she has become active. The poltergeist is activating them, and they're battery operated and shut off, but they're talking and moving around and doing all kinds of things because of this poltergeist. And here I'm describing to the group the kind of pattern of phenomena of this pinwheel inside the plastic container with an open top, and mentioning how many activations each hour. So you're going to hear a lot of numbers being read off for activations per hour.
At 9 o'clock is 10 times. The day before, on Tuesday, here's the numbers: 8, 14, 10, 12, 17, 13, 18, 16, 5, 9, 1, 1, 9, 17, 15, 15, 13, 8, 7, 21, 15, 10, 8, and 0.
It's hard to find a pattern. It's very active, but there doesn't seem to be a pattern of what's causing it to act. Here's the strongest turn of the evening. I just finished telling a story, a Hindu story about the god Ganesh, who has an elephant's head, and how he ended up getting the elephant's head, and Boris is remarking about that, and then there's a lot of silence.
A really wild story. Really wild. want to hear another story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's very rare that we have so much silence, and apparently that seemed to activate it, the phenomena. Now, Boris is telling a story about the Chris Watt family murders, and you'll listen to the story and then I'll talk about that.
Very interesting case of kind of a psychopath killing his family because he had a new girlfriend. But what's interesting is after friends of Shanann was the woman, his wife, was murdered, and people started to miss her.
So I don't see a discussion of this on Wikipedia when I checked up on this, but according to Boris, the media, a lot of their efforts captured paranormal phenomena. There's electronic voice phenomena, and they heard this woman's voice, and you saw an apparitional image of her. Apparently it was captured by the media, so apparently they're familiar with that, and at least they're seeing about that in Germany. Here's another story. Heather's talking about post-traumatic stress disorder.
Or how do you think? Like, I wonder about PTSD, and I wonder about it because I wonder, like, the dissociation part, I wonder if that's kind of like a ghost.
So we're...
Well, that's funny. I've heard you say things.
I'm talking about that. She's mentioned that kind of idea before, wondering if some kind of paranormal phenomenon intrudes in to take a role in mental disorder, ghost-like behavior. So we discuss post-traumatic stress disorder, and I talk about the memories and the physiology, and then she asks a question about this.
Things that are connected to that memory.
You always have to recount events in order for that to be a reconstruction.
I don't know if you always have to do anything. I'm not wise enough to know that. But according to these books, and also I've got this Vietnam thing I've been working with. I mean, I think it involves reframing it so that you can just deal with it.
And we're talking about if you can only bring your rational mind to bear on the memory, you can come to an awareness that it is just a memory, that it's not actually an inherent part of you. It's just a memory that you are holding. It's not necessary to get rid of it. Now, it's not certain that you have to do this verbalization. There's all different strategies to deal with the post-traumatic stress disorder. And here I have another. Now, there's not enough time really for me to cover all these different activations, so I've just selected some which seemed, the pinwheel seems more active. And it really wasn't very active. It typically was just making 1/4 turns.
If you have a difficult childhood or a difficult adolescence, then that increases your probability of having these kinds of experiences. Extraperception, paranormal dream, out-of-body experience, all these things are correlated. But it's not just randomly distributed. Like, each person has their own pattern.
So in a way, it's like, sometimes it seems like we're doing a kind of therapy session where we're trying to bring our rational thinking to something which is somewhat inexplicable. I've just talked about how I want to make the phenomena happen, and Boris is saying, well, we have to give the phenomena freedom. We can't keep the lid on the jar. So we've taken the lid off the jar. So you've got to give the dog some leash. Now you'll notice this light comes on, the camera gets activated, and then the light comes on afterwards. And Boris and I both noticed there were events that occurred this evening where the camera was activated before the pinwheel turned, and I don't know how that can be explained. It seemed somewhat strange. Now I was told a number of stories from Hindu mythology, Hindu history, and this is a story from the Buddhist tradition of Huainin. He's the sixth patriarch of the Chinese Chan Buddhism, and the story is, I'll just summarize it real quick. The head of the monastery called for people to submit like poems summarizing Buddhism, and an important personage in the monastery submitted a poem that saying, "The mind is a mirror, clean the mirror and become enlightened." And Hunin, who was just a kitchen worker at the time, submitted a poem that the head of the monastery felt far superior. His poem was, "There is no mind and there is no mirror. He who realizes that has become enlightened." So we're talking about that, and I'm bringing the idea of the pinwheels into this.
Maybe we should go on to something else besides this pinwheels. We didn't like that. Switch off.
Yeah.
Pinwheels. You want to hang around to start with the floor?
Yeah. So loud.
Because there's nothing, no mind, there's no mirror. Why do we got to get close here?
Yeah, there's no mind, no mirror, no pinwheel.
Yeah, no mind, no mirror. So Heather was attracted to that idea, central to that type of Buddhism. Here, Boris is talking about a job application, an interview that he's going to have. You might hear a train in the background.
Teach many things. That's what makes it interesting, because it's not always the same. There are a lot of things to do. Yeah.
So I don't know how we're going to explain what we're experiencing, but I think there are artifact explanations. I encourage skeptical people not to bother us so much and just let us be. We're dealing with artifacts and we realize it, but the artifacts seem to give a covering for the phenomena. So here we hear a train go by, it makes vibrations, and maybe that affects the pinwheels sometimes, I don't know. After the session was over, there's a decline. Here you notice the first hour is 19 activations, and 12, 7, 11, 6, 10, 13, 9, 9, 16. Then we have a real decline. So the average number per hour is 8.9 after, and the average for 3 hours is 26.8. So here at our summary, I'm going to compare those numbers. After the Alice, here, let me summarize everything. After the Alice container was covered, Alice was completely still. Then we removed the covering, Alice became very active. But why was Lefty completely inactive? If your explanation for Alice becoming active is going to be thermal conductivity, which seems possible, like here's the camera, maybe it's radiating heat and that's affecting this pinwheel, but why isn't this pinwheel affected? And if you're going to explain the difference between the use of the camera, maybe it's radiating heat and that should cause the pinwheels to turn, but why isn't Lefty turning because of the heat? Why is only this pinwheel turning? And of course, we did an experiment previously where we put a glass over the cameras and it still turned anyway. So it's a game, and I think there are artifacts, and so the phenomena can kind of hide among that. Then the session ended, Alice became less active. So here's the numbers: activity before the session 39.5, then during the session 85, and then the average over per 3 hours is 26.8. It declines.